Hi, welcome to another quick answer session here. We already did one on just a general introduction to apologetics. I thought maybe this time we could look at a couple of tactics that will help us as we interact with people dealing with Christianity, challenges to Christianity. And a reminder one more time, if you want more of this in depth, I've got videos and audio selections, and I've also got a book out, so you can take a look at that. But let's talk general tactics first before we get to some specific ways to interact with people effectively. And I think the first one, and probably the primary one of everything we're going to say and everything that we're going to cover, is good listening skills. That's primary. We need to hear people out. We need to know what the challenge is. We need to know specifically what they're talking about. And I'm afraid that we're always interested in providing salvos of answers, and we're not really listening. All we're doing is waiting for a chance to leap in and hit them with a bunch of apologetics. And I don't think we want to do that. I've heard over and over again the value, and I'm a tough person to learn in this area. It's hard for me, but we need to value listening, and listening is right at the top of the list. The second thing we should do, as far as just general preparation, would be to have some resources available. I'll be glad to send you a resource list, but this is a rich time period for apologetics. Good heavens, there are books and there are DVDs and there are websites. There's so much material out there. We should have access to some of those as we interact with people. And then third, something we might think about before, again, we actually get out there and start talking to people, and that is to think about who bears the responsibility of providing proof. If you're out there and you're presenting things, then obviously you've made an argument and you must support it with reasons, evidence. But many times we're hearing other people suggest things like, well, God doesn't exist, we can't trust the New Testament, I don't think Jesus ever lived, Christians are so narrow-minded, and all these things are out there. And the person who makes the comment must bear the responsibility for proving it. And so that takes the pressure off us. So if somebody says, oh, the Bible's been changed over the years, we don't have to say, oh, no, it hasn't. Let me give you a bunch of information why it hasn't. We can simply put the burden of proof on them in a nice way, and have them prove what they just claimed. Now let's get to some questions. These are two key questions that I hope you make part of your routine as you're talking to people. Greg Kokel covers this in a book of his called Tactics. The first question is, when somebody says something like, oh, the Bible's been changed, we'll use that as an example. Oh, the Bible's been changed. We can simply ask the question, what do you mean by that? So there's question number one. What do you mean by that? So whatever the claim is, you're asking for clarification. Nothing wrong with that. You're not being snotty or mean-spirited. Oh, the Bible's been changed. What do you mean changed? Now, if they're just talking about translations, that's one thing. If they're talking about somebody slipped some verses in or took some verses out, that's a different issue. But you see, the clarification is really important. So question one, what do you mean by that? Question two is, once you find out what they mean, why do you believe that? Why are you saying that? In other words, I get your claim, I understand that. Where's the proof that's supporting that? Could you tell me that? Why do you believe that? And you'd be surprised how few people really have support. They have opinions, tons of opinions, but the support isn't there. Here's the third thing to think about. It's looking for what's called a self-refuting point. So, for example, somebody says, I can't stand Christians because they're intolerant. Well, just listen to what they said. I can't stand Christians. That sounds like somebody who's intolerant. I can't stand Christians because they're intolerant. You see, their claim defeated itself. It showed that they were intolerant. So what's the big deal? How about this one? You ever heard Christians, somebody's talking to a Christian and says, oh, you Christians are so judgmental. Can you hear that that's self-refuting? What did that person just do to the Christian? Judged the Christian as being judgmental. And so that destroys that whole argument there. So ask a question, what do you mean? What do you mean? Why do you say that? Third thing is look for those self-refuting statements. They're out there all over the place. A fourth one that I just call take it to the limits is hear what the claim is that somebody is making. Listen to what they're suggesting is the way to conduct ourselves as a society, and ask, well, how does that work if we take that principle and apply it in other areas? So let me give you an example. Somebody says, Well, any behavior is okay as long as you're not hurting somebody. That's called a minimalist ethic. Anything's okay. It's fine as long as you're not hurting somebody. So what you do is you think of situations in which people are not hurt, but it's an awful thing. So how about a drug rape? Somebody gets drugs slipped into their drink and they get raped. Now, technically, nobody got hurt. This person doesn't remember it. What about peeping Toms? They go to windows and they look in at people. Well, nobody's hurt. But everybody agrees that drug rape and doing peeping Tom activities, these are terrible. So apparently that principle's not so good about, well, do anything you want as long as you don't hurt somebody. How about this one? Well, let's move on. I want to make sure these stay short. So let's think of some points at the end here. So basic things to remember, the results are up to God, they're not up to us. Isn't that good news? Oh, I'm so relieved because I know I mess up a lot. And so I want to make sure I'm just going to be faithful. I'm just going to put the word out there. It may not be said in the best way. It may be halting. It may stumble a little bit, but it's up to God. So thank goodness. These tactics are helpful, but the results are always up to God. Here's a second thing to keep in mind. Practice helps. Practice helps. Like anything else, riding a bike, practice helps. So get in there, get in the game, say some things, and think about it later. How did you do? Was there a point in there where it kind of fell apart on you? Then think about how you could have changed that. But we go over it, and we do it, and we do it, and we do it, and we always are going to get better. And then we ought to think about this. Greg Koukl says we should just have a modest goal. And that goal is put a stone in somebody's shoe. Get them thinking. That's all you have to do. Taking them to the cross of Christ in one session, one discussion is probably not going to happen. Thank God if it does, but it may not happen that way. So we just want to get them thinking, and hopefully there'll be other conversations and we can explore it and make things, lead them toward Christ, because that's our ultimate goal.